And joining us now is the congressman from Burbank and the current frontrunner to be the next U.S. Senator from California, Adam Schiff. Welcome back to the show. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
All right, so let's start with the big breaking political story. Who is going to be Kamala Harris's VP? You've said that the decision really isn't so much about chemistry, but about who can help her the most and when it comes to winning the election. So is that person the governor of this biggest swing state of all, Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro?
It very well may be. If he can deliver Pennsylvania, and he's very popular in Pennsylvania, then that's worth the price of admission. There are obviously a number of other really talented candidates, Tim Walz in Minnesota, Mark Kelly in Arizona, among others, that also, bring help in Midwestern states or in Arizona. But Josh Shapiro, if he can deliver Pennsylvania, that alone is huge.
All right, so we'll see what happens in terms of that. Now, we haven't talked with you since you made global headlines by suggesting that President Biden drop out of this race, which is why Kamala Harris is making this decision now. Here's some of what you said at the time. While the choice to withdraw from the campaign is President Biden's alone, I believe it is time for him to pass the torch, and in doing so, secure his legacy of leadership by allowing us to defeat Donald Trump in the upcoming election. Can you take us behind the scenes on how you arrived there and whether you've spoken with President Biden since then?
I haven't had a chance to speak to the president since then, and it was hard to get to that point because I have such admiration for him. He's been an incredibly accomplished president, doing more in one term than most ever do. And more than that, I just great affection for him. But I did come to the conclusion that it was best that he passed the torch, that we needed someone with the vigor of Kamala Harris to prosecute the case against Donald Trump. I worked so hard to hold Trump accountable for his various abuses of office and in criminality, for that matter, to not do everything I could to prevent him from returning to the Oval Office. And I know that if I hadn't said something and we had sort of walked into an electoral nightmare, I would have kicked myself later. So I did speak out. As I said from the beginning, I was confident Joe Biden would make the decision that was best for the country, and I think that's exactly what he's done.
Were you in communication with former Speaker Nancy Pelosi during that process?
It's interesting. There's been a lot of commentary about that I was essentially, as one commentator described it, one of Nancy Pelosi's drone, like an unmanned aerial drone. I did not consult with her before I made the statement that I did. I certainly have a very close relationship with her. She keeps her cards very close to the vest, particularly on something like this. So she kept her own counsel about what she was discussing with the president. But I know that she was hearing from members, including myself, but others from battleground states or in tough House races who are deeply concerned about the direction we were heading in. And I'm sure that she communicated those concerns as she heard them from our caucus.
Most political reporters found that very hard to believe, the idea that you weren't in communication with her. So you're saying you did this completely on your own without any consultation with her?
I did it on my own. I didn't consult with her before I made the statement or even decided to make it public. And I know that is hard for some people to accept because we are very close. But I wanted to respect her decision-making process. I didn't want to, put that burden on her to tell me, go, no go, this is what you should say, this is not what you should say. I think from her point of view, this was a deeply personal decision for all of us to make about what we thought was best for the country and whether we felt compelled to speak out or not. So I didn't want to put her in that position.
You talk all the time about the importance of democracy. We know that 3.2 million Californians voted for Joe Biden in the primary. Yes, they knew that Kamala Harris was his vice president, but they didn't vote for her at the top of the ticket. How is it democratic for the Democratic Party to unanimously nominate someone who no regular voters actually voted for?
Well, the way the process works is we vote for people to represent us at the convention, to cast their vote along the lines that we would like. And that's what would have taken place at the convention, but for the decision Joe Biden made to step aside. And now he made the recommendation to the convention, but it was only a recommendation that we get behind the vice president. But we very quickly closed ranks behind the vice president. But that is the way the democratic process works. And it works that way in part for a very significant reason, and that is circumstances change. And, it became, I think, clear to the president that it was the right time to pass the torch to his vice president. And that's what he did. But I think that is certainly consistent with the Democratic Party functions and the way we vote for delegates at the convention. We followed the appropriate process.
A big issue continues to be jobs and the economy. Last week, President Biden said this.
Cure the economy and the environment.
I mean, he may have been a little bit joking there, saying that he cured the economy, but the latest unemployment number is actually up, with June employment revised down by 29,000. The stock market, we've seen these wild fluctuations there. Inflation remains an issue. What do you say to Americans who feel right now that Bidenomics isn't working for them and they want to change?
Well, first of all, the president did create millions and millions of jobs, 10 to 15 million jobs under his watch, compared to Donald Trump, who lost net jobs when he was president. So he has a record to be proud of. At the same time, so many people are working but still struggling to get by, and both can be true at the same time. This, to me, is the central economic challenge, not just of these days of inflation, but going back decades, and that is people year after year are working harder than ever and struggling more than ever to get by. Now, a lot of this is the fact that the way our economy has evolved with globalization, automation, increasingly with AI. If you're doing well, you're going to do even better. And if you're not, you're going to fall further behind. We need to make the economy work for everyone again. And there are lots of ways to do it. I'm focused on bringing down the cost of housing, which is one of the primary inflation drivers that makes it so hard for people. The only way we're going to really succeed in attacking that problem is by building hundreds and hundreds of thousands of units of new housing in California every year. And I'm working on dramatically expanding the tax credits to develop affordable housing, because right now it's not penciling out. But local governments are going to have to help. They're going to have to get to yes on these decisions much more quickly. We can't take 4 years to build new housing. We can't spend $1 million a door to build affordable housing. We're going to need to work together at the federal, state, and local level to solve that part of our economic challenge.
And obviously, you want to be doing this work in the United States Senate. You're in the middle of a Senate race right now against Republican Steve Garvey, and you're really dominating in the recent polls. Let's look at the Real Clear Politics average of recent polls. Shows you up 58.5 to 35.5. How would you characterize your place in this race right now? And because of those numbers, will you be spending significant time and money campaigning for other candidates in the months ahead?
Well, look, my feeling is run scared or run unopposed. That is, unless you're lucky enough not to have opposition, I've never been in that kind of position, you run hard. And I'm running hard. I'm running harder than Steve Garvey. I'm traveling all over the state. He seems to be conducting what used to be in the last century called a front porch campaign, where you sit in your front porch and you wait for people to come to you. No, I'm going all over the state. And while I do that, I am, like I was just the last 2 days, spending time in those House districts in California that if we can flip, we can change the majority in the House of Representatives. So I was in Orange County just in the last 2 days, campaigning with two of our Orange County Democratic candidates. I was in the north of the state campaigning with another. And I am going to do my best to help these other senators in their races and to help the vice president. I was in Nevada for a day campaigning for her. As long as I can do that with at the same time running a vigorous race in California, then I want to help others as well.
Steve Garvey did make a big deal about the fact that he traveled and visited Israel. And he said that he's with Israel yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Do you have any issues with the way that Israel has pursued its war with Gaza?
Look, I'm glad that Steve Garvey went to Israel, but I think Steve Garvey feels that making one trip to the Middle East somehow makes him now an expert on the Middle East, and I would quarrel with that kind of presumption. But look, I support Israel's right to defend itself. They were brutally assaulted by this terrorist organization, Hamas, which butchered, massacred, raped, tortured 1,200 people, including Americans, and still holds Americans and Israelis and others kidnapped and holds them captive. So we need to defend our ally. At the same time, we need to do everything we can to reduce civilian casualties in Gaza. That is a humanitarian imperative. We have to make sure that people can access food and medical supplies as well. And I don't think those are incompatible. But look, I've got plenty of issues with Bibi Netanyahu. I did before the war. I certainly do during the war. And I don't minimize those either. But from my point of view, it's an important state-to-state relationship. This is our strongest ally in the region. It needs to transcend whoever the prime minister is and whoever the president of the United States is, for that matter.
You know, you were part of a massive Zoom call for Kamala Harris called White Dudes for Harris. It was a big success, raised over $4 million in a night. But why the need to do white dudes for Harris, or black men for Harris, or Latino men for Harris? Why not just dudes for Harris, or people for Harris?
Oh, I mean, the whole campaign is people for Harris. So all of that is happening. When I was in Nevada, for example, something for her earlier in the week, it was, anyone, everyone for the vice president. But it got started when black women wanted to do something special for Kamala Harris. And then white women wanted to do so, and then white dudes wanted to do so. And it's not uncommon for political campaigns, Democratic or Republican, to have events that are focused on a particular community. What is unusual, though, is to see the kind of massive interest in participating. I mean, to get, 100,000 or 200,000 dudes or anybody, frankly, on a Zoom is pretty unheard of. But what was best about it, Elex, and you'll appreciate this, is we had the dude on that Zoom. That is Jeff Bridges, the Big Lebowski.
Of course, I knew you were going to say that, which is why I have the video ready to go. I knew that would be your favorite part. The dude from your favorite movie, The Big Lebowski. What was it like for you to be on that call with him?
Oh, it was terrific. It was such a great surprise. And Alex, you'll forgive me if I told you the story already, but I was in the Oval Office about 2 months ago for a bill signing with President Biden. And when the signing was done, he quoted some movie, which I didn't recognize the reference. And he told me he likes to quote movies, and often his staff doesn't recognize the reference. And I said, I do the same thing. But I said, Mr. President, I want to quote a movie in the Oval Office and make Lebowski history. When I say, looking at that beautiful oval rug in the Oval Office, Mr. President, this rug really ties the whole room together.
Did he get it? Has Joe Biden seen The Big Lebowski before?
He certainly laughed. Whether he understood the reference, whether he's a Big Lebowski fan or not, I cannot speak to, but he did crack up.
Yeah, all right. Well, if you all win, or even during this administration, maybe you got to find a way to bring Jeff Bridges to the Oval Office to show him the rug, and then maybe you can really bring that thing full circle. Congressman,
he told me to take any rug in the place.
Yeah, exactly. Congressman Schiff, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Great to see you.